everyone, I am Kim Snyder, and thank you so much for joining me for the Sane Crypto Podcast, the first cryptocurrency podcast for baby boomers investing for retirement. See, most people believe that crypto assets are too risky for the average investor. I believe that the risk is in not investing, and in fact, cryptocurrency may be the answer to near retirees' prayers. But the trick is to structure our investment so that if the naysayers are right, we don't do irreparable harm to our nest egg, but if the believers are right, we make potentially life-changing money that could catapult us across that retirement finish line. The Sane Crypto Mastermind is my signature program for those who want cryptocurrency type returns, but can't, won't, or don't have time to figure this all out and keep up with it on their own. If you'd like to learn more, I'd encourage you to join my free online training, which is called How a Little Bit of Bitcoin Can Make Your Retirement Savings Go a Lot Further at sanecrypto.com/retirement. As I'm recording this, it's July 2018. The time of year those of us in the northern hemisphere like to go somewhere, anywhere, to get away from the heat, which is also usually a great time to catch up on your reading. So I thought today would be a good time to share my recommended resources list. And my resources list, which, by the way, you can get at sanecrypto.com/reading, is broken into sections. There's topics and tools. The tools section is a list of the software, hardware, and services that I use and recommend. Things like brokerage firms, hardware wallets, tax software, etc. But the topics section is really an investor curriculum, if you will. It's what I think are the best reads, or occasionally videos and podcasts, but mainly reading, in various topic areas, with the idea that if you read all of them, you would have a really solid understanding of investing in personal finance, better, in fact, than probably 95% of the population. And the topic areas are money and personal finance, investing basics, behavioral finance, crypto assets, and investing lessons from non-investing books. So, maybe you need to start at the very beginning and read them all because you are a newcomer to the world of personal finance and investing. Or maybe you just have a particular area where your knowledge isn't as strong as others, like crypto assets, for example. Well, in that case, you could just pick and choose, as needed or whatever strikes your fancy. So that is all there. And again, you can get both lists, the topics and the tools, by going to sanecrypto.com/reading. And fair warning, it's not, this isn't like all fancy or anything. It's like my personal working document. Okay. But rather than go through the entire list, which I think would be kind of boring, I wanted to pick out 3 summer reads for investors who want to win at investing to discuss on today's show. And those 3 reads are my recommendations from the behavioral finance section of the list. And I'll tell you what they are in just a minute. But first, why did I pick the behavioral finance section to highlight? And what is it? Well, it's because, as Morgan Housel points out in one of the recommended articles, the finance industry talks too much about what to do and not enough about what happens in your head when you try to do it. I'll tell you a story. It's my deepest scar as an investment manager. I remember it as clear as day. It was late 2008. After the initial losses of late 2007 and early 2008, for those of you who don't remember, this is like, the teeth of the financial crisis. The market had just had a gut-wrenching drop from around 1,300 on the S&P 500 to 800 in less than a month. And my phone rings, as it did quite a lot during those days and weeks. My job during that period was to be what I called the believer of last resort. Sometimes clients just needed a little bit of reassurance. Other times I had to talk them off the financial ledge. But we had our clients positioned from a portfolio perspective, an asset from a structural perspective to weather this sort of storm. And we talked often for years, almost ad nauseum, right, about our not caring whether the market went up or down, right? But, okay, this was admittedly pretty different. Because, there was, if you'll remember, there was a period of time where we were legitimately on the brink of a global financial collapse. It doesn't really at that point matter how your portfolio is structured. And it was really scary. And so this particular call was from one of our self-managed clients. And it was him and his wife on the call. And he says, I'm going to sell the portfolio and go to cash. He says, I cannot lose everything I've worked for my whole life. And you could hear his voice was trembling. And he and his wife were, both in their late 60s, retired with enough to live on, but not a lot more. And his wife says, I told him to call you first, Kim, because I think this is a really bad idea. We're down, but the portfolio is still generating enough income for us to live on. And, I don't think we should sell. And her husband just kept repeating, to every entreaty that we made, I cannot lose everything. So after over an hour of trying to convince him at his age that selling was financial suicide, we hung up. And, I just watched a man leap to his financial death, and I was powerless to stop him. His fear overrode every logical argument that we could make. And the reason I remember it so clearly is that I sat at my desk and I sobbed. And I suspect that his wife did too. 4 months later, the market took one more death-defying plunge to around 700 on the S&P 500, and then began its 10-year climb straight up to 2,800. The vast majority of your success or failure, I would argue maybe even as high as 90% of your success as an investor, is not about what happens in the markets. It's how you react to what happens, or more specifically, don't react, that determines your success as an investor and therefore your future standard of living. In Hierarchy of Portfolio Success, an article by Barry Ritholtz, he stack ranks the factors affecting the return of an investment portfolio. And he says, specifically from the moment someone starts saving for retirement until the day they begin to take their required minimum distributions at age 70 and a half, what are the factors that determine just how successful that portfolio is in terms of net inflation-adjusted returns? At the bottom of that list, in terms of impact, he has security selection, costs and expenses, and asset allocation. At the top, behavior and discipline. And nowhere is this more clearly quantified than in the QAIB. It stands for the Quantitative Analysis of Investor Behavior. It's a study that's been done by Dalbar, a respected research firm, for the last 23 years. I've been quoting it almost that long, year after year. After year, without fail, the average investor earns less, in many cases significantly less, than the investments that they are invested in because of their decisions to buy and sell. So, for example, in the 30-year period, and it always looks like this, by the way, in the 30-year period ending December 2016, the S&P 500 went up on average 10.16% per year. But the average stock investor only earned 3.98%. 10.16 for the stock market, 3.98 for the average stock investor, which is barely 1% above the rate of inflation. So back to Barry Ritholtz's, inflation-adjusted returns, right? I mean, it's almost nothing over the same period of time. And in a sad confirmation of what I witnessed when my client leapt to his metaphorical death in 2008, Dalbar says, quote, "We have also seen that inflows and outflows," which, by the way, is like wonk speak for buying and selling of an investment. They say inflows and outflows all too frequently come at the worst possible time. For the most recent evidence of this, one needs to look no further than last year, when the three best months of 2016, which were March, July, and November, coincided with either neutral or negative cash flows, meaning people were selling in the best months. This behavior, I'm still quoting, has been identified year after year since QAIB began in 1994. So translated, this means that year after year, market cycle after market cycle, investors react to fear and greed, causing them to buy tops and sell bottoms over and over and over again, which is obviously the opposite of what it is that we are intending to do. And what this tells me as an advisor or now mentor is that my most important job is to shine a very bright light on this and help people to manage it. So with that as background, okay, that's why I've chosen specifically this behavioral finance section to highlight for you today. So here are my 3 summer reads for investors who want to win at investing. So the first is an outstanding report by Morgan Housel, who I referenced earlier, called The Psychology of Money. Now, I'm going to link to all of these in the show notes, okay, along with, the link to the full list. And, I would just pretty much recommend anything that Morgan writes. Just go to the bottom of this article and subscribe to their digest, because he really is one of the very good thinkers right now and writers, and it's